You finish a long day of work. You plan to hit the gym and then cook a healthy dinner. Instead, you walk through the front door, snap at your partner over a misplaced pair of shoes, and order a large pizza. We usually blame this evening collapse on a lack of discipline. We assume we have one bucket of willpower for our careers, a separate bucket for sticking to a diet, and another one entirely for being patient with our families. To test that assumption, psychologist Roy Baumeister invited hungry college students into a lab filled with the smell of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. But there was a catch. They were locked in a room with a plate of those warm cookies and a bowl of raw radishes, and ordered to only eat the radishes. The researchers watched through a hidden window. The radish eaters struggled. They stared at the cookies. They picked them up to smell the melted chocolate, fighting their own impulses, before reluctantly taking a bite of a radish instead. Then came the real test. The subjects were moved to another room and given an impossible geometry puzzle to see how long they would persevere. Looking at this bar chart of the results, the difference is stark. The group allowed to eat the cookies worked for 20 minutes before giving up. The radish eaters quit after just 8 minutes, a 60% drop in stamina. The mental effort of resisting those cookies had completely drained them. Baumeister named this phenomenon ego depletion. He borrowed the term ego as a nod to Sigmund Freud, who theorized decades earlier that the self runs on a transferable, measurable mental energy. Resisting dessert at lunch, suppressing a smirk in a meeting, or deciding which emails to answer, they all draw from the exact same finite account. And when that account is empty, your self-control simply collapses. For a long time, psychologists treated this mental energy like a software glitch. That the brain is a physical machine, and machines need a power cord. What is that invisible energy actually made of? It turns out the brain's self-control centers run on a specific biological fuel, glucose. If we visualize the brain's network, we can see these energy nodes in action. As mental strain increases, the glucose supply physically drains. Researchers proved this by repeating the depletion experiments and then giving subjects lemonade. Half got a drink sweetened with real sugar, which immediately flooded the brain with fresh glucose. Their willpower bounced right back. The other half got artificially sweetened lemonade. They received 0 calories, their neural network stayed dim, and their self-control remained completely depleted. This biological limit shows up everywhere in the real world. People with clinical hypoglycemia, who struggle converting food into energy, show measurable spikes in impulsive behavior. Similarly, during the premenstrual phase of a woman's cycle, the body diverts a massive amount of glucose to the reproductive system, leaving the brain temporarily starved of the fuel it needs to regulate mood and spending. When you fail to hold your temper or stick to a budget, it rarely means you have a weak moral character. It usually means your brain is physically out of gas. You don't even have to be actively resisting a chocolate chip cookie or a sudden burst of anger to empty your tank. Modern life drains our battery passively. A massive, invisible drain comes from conflicting goals. We want to save money, but we also want to go out with our friends. We want to excel at work, but we want to spend more hours with our children. When these demands clash, we don't take action. Instead, we ruminate. We spend hours staring at our screens, subconsciously worrying about how to fit everything in. That low-level mental distress quietly burns through our glucose supply. Even historical geniuses couldn't outsmart this biology. In his 20s, Benjamin Franklin mapped out 13 different virtues, like frugality, industry, and silence, and tried to track them all simultaneously in a notebook. He constantly failed, because practicing industry at work meant violating his goal to practice frugality by mending his own clothes at home. Packing your to-do list with overlapping priorities creates a biological deficit before you even start your day. The mental friction alone bankrupts your account. Once you understand the strict biological limits of the willpower economy, you can reverse engineer your daily habits to manage the budget. The first rule is to feed the beast, but burn slow. A sudden sugar crash leaves you more depleted than before. To maintain steady self-control, you have to rely on low glycemic foods like nuts, apples, and proteins that release glucose gradually into your bloodstream. By extension, there is a golden rule for behavioral biology. Never make a major financial decision and never hash out a serious relationship problem on an empty stomach. Then there is how we plan. This calendar interface illustrates the difference between rigid and flexible scheduling. When planning minute by minute, one unexpected delay shatters the whole day, forcing constant recalculations. But with a fuzzy monthly boundary, the structure fluidly absorbs shifting tasks. In clinical studies, fuzzy planning works vastly better because it eliminates the need to constantly make exhausting micro-decisions every time life goes off track. You maintain your momentum because you aren't burning willpower on scheduling triage. True self-control is rarely about white-knuckling through a craving or trying harder to be disciplined. It is about engineering your diet, your daily environment, and your goals so that you don't have to spend your willpower in the first place.